In chemistry, a reaction only happens when the conditions are right. It's no different in real estate. Welcome to the Alkaline Reaction, a podcast from Alkaline Advisors, where we break down the deals, partners, and capital structures that turn opportunities into outcomes. I'm Spencer Carenti, and today's reaction, zoning, the framework behind commercial real estate. Before capital is deployed, before architects draw plans, before lenders size a loan, zoning has already decided what's possible. In this episode, we'll walk through zoning in a way that's simple, structured, and strategic. Here's what we'll cover. First, what zoning actually is and why it exists. Second, who controls it. Third, the 5 core levers that shape every property: use, density, intensity, form, and impact controls. Then we'll talk about how zoning changes create value. And finally, we'll tie it together with how institutional investors think about zoning risk. By the end of this, you won't look at a piece of land the same way again. With that, here's what zoning really is. At its simplest, zoning is a city's rule book for land. It answers 5 questions. What can happen here? How big can it be? How much revenue can it support? What must it look like? And how will it affect the surrounding area? Without zoning, cities would be chaotic. You could have a warehouse next to a school, a nightclub in the middle of a residential neighborhood, or heavy manufacturing across from a hospital. Zoning creates order, but for investors, zoning does something even more important. It controls supply. And in commercial real estate, supply drives returns. Next, who controls zoning? Zoning decisions are not made by one person. Typically, there are 4 players involved: the planning department, the technical experts who review applications, the planning commission, an appointed board that holds public hearings, the city council or county commissioners, elected officials who make final decisions, and then the community, neighbors who can support or oppose projects. So when you're developing property, you're not just building real estate, you're navigating governance. Institutional investors understand that zoning is both legal and political. Now let's break zoning down into something very practical. Every zoning code in every city regulates 5 core things. If you understand these 5 levers, you understand zoning. Let's go one by one. Lever 1, use. What can operate there? This is the most obvious piece. Is the property zoned for retail, industrial, office, multifamily, mixed use? Let me give you an example. Imagine 3 identical parcels of land on the same busy road. Parcel A is zoned neighborhood commercial. It allows coffee shops, small retail, maybe service businesses. Parcel B is zoned light industrial. It allows warehouses, distribution, light manufacturing. Parcel C is zoned multifamily. It allows apartments. Same traffic, same demographics, same visibility. But 3 completely different income models. The permitted use determines tenant type, lease structure, stability, and revenue potential. If apartment demand is strong, multifamily zoning becomes extremely valuable. If logistics demand surges, industrial zoning becomes scarce and powerful. Use is the foundation of valuation. Lever 2, density. How much can you build? Let's assume the land is zoned for apartments. The next question is, how many? Density is often measured in units per acre. Imagine you own 1 acre. If zoning allows 12 units per acre, you can build 12 apartments. If zoning allows 36 units per acre, you can build 36 apartments. At $2,000 per month rent, that difference triples your gross revenue. Same land, different density. Density is a multiplier. Small changes in density allowances can significantly change land value. Lever 3, intensity. How much revenue can the land support? Density is about quantity. Intensity is about economic scale. For retail or office, this usually comes down to square footage. Let's say zoning allows 10,000 square feet of retail. At $30 per square foot, that's $300,000 in annual gross rent. But if zoning allows 40,000 square feet, now it's $1.2 million annually. Zoning sets the ceiling on revenue. It literally caps the earning potential of the land. That's why institutional investors study it first. Lever 4, form. How must it be built? Even if use and density look attractive, form regulations can change everything. Form includes height limits, setbacks, parking requirements, lot coverage, and design standards. Let's break that down. Height. If zoning allows 3 stories, that's one economic model. If it allows 12 stories, that's an entirely different valuation. Setbacks. If the building must sit 25 feet from the road and 15 feet from property lines, your buildable footprint shrinks. Less footprint means less rentable area. Parking. This is one of the biggest hidden constraints. If zoning requires 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet and your lot physically can't support that many spaces, your building size is capped. Interestingly, many cities are now eliminating parking minimums, and when they do, development feasibility expands dramatically. Form rules shape what is physically possible. Lever 5, impact controls. How does the project affect its surroundings? Finally, even if everything else aligns, cities evaluate impact. This includes traffic studies, environmental regulations, stormwater management, noise, and floodplain restrictions. An industrial building may be allowed by use, but if traffic studies show the road can't handle truck volume, approval may be denied, or wetlands may reduce buildable area. Impact controls introduce friction, and friction affects both timeline and cost. Now let's talk strategy. There are 3 main ways zoning can change. First, rezoning. This changes the property's classification. For example, agricultural to commercial, or industrial to multifamily. If approved, land value can increase significantly. Second, variances. These are requests for flexibility, maybe reduced parking, smaller setbacks, or additional height. Sometimes small adjustments unlock large economic gains. Third, text amendments. This is when the city changes the zoning code itself. For example, increasing density near transit corridors citywide. When that happens, entire neighborhoods can reprice. Sophisticated investors pay close attention to policy shifts because regulatory change often precedes market change. At scale, zoning isn't viewed as a hurdle. It's viewed as a risk variable. Investors evaluate, what's the probability of approval? How long will it take? What's the political climate? Does the proposal align with the city's long-term comprehensive plan? Zoning risk is time risk plus political risk, and both can be priced. Markets with predictable governance attract more institutional capital because predictability lowers uncertainty. Now, let's review what we covered today. What zoning is, the rulebook that allocates development rights, who controls it, the 5 levers, use, density, intensity, form, and impact controls. We discussed how rezoning and variances create value, and we looked at how institutional investors treat zoning as strategy, not bureaucracy. Zoning determines what can be built, how big it can be, how much income it can generate, and whether it gets approved at all. It is the invisible architecture of every commercial real estate deal. If you understand zoning, you understand supply. And if you understand supply, you understand commercial real estate. That's today's reaction. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and join us next time as we continue breaking down the commercial real estate industry. I'm Spencer Correnti, and thank you for your time.